Next, we have a panel on a subject that always comes up, cybersecurity. The moderator is Svetlana Efimova, who's the COO and co-founder of Oz Forensics. Please welcome to the stage, Svetlana. So Svetlana is a strategic advisor and board member, an expert in technology and global markets. For the last 20 years, she's been working with the leading high-tech and cybersecurity companies. Over to you.
Three. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the panel discussion about cybersecurity. And thank you for the introduction. Today, we have two virtual panelists, but before it, I would like them to introduce. Today with us, Mr. Mohammed Mustafa, Global Chief Information Security Officer, Egyptian Arab Land Bank. Mohammed has 30 years of experience both in IT and information security, and major part of them on the position of Chief Information Officer. Mohammed, are you here with us? Okay. Let's wait a little bit. And Shabel Diab, Senior Director of Sales in MENA Region 1 Span, has a great experience while implementing the existing technologies as well as innovations. Today, we talked a lot about the clients and how we can make them happy. Even me, also a client of the bank, what would I like to have? I like financial services here and at the time what I want. To open an account, to confirm transaction on something like that. And from one hand, I need to trust a bank. That means I would like to be sure that all my data and all my information is quite safe. This is from one hand, I would like easy way to go without any efforts. It's in front. From the other hand, it's a hard work. Because on background, this is a big infrastructure which should combine the very big variety of technologies existing and new ones and working smoothly, not even for me to notice. I would like to ask to audience, are there any Chief Information Officers or Chief Information Security Officers here? Could you please raise your hand? Great respect to your job, because me as a client, I couldn't see it, but I can work with bank application, with bank, and you make me happy and safe. Based on World Economic Forum Insight Report 2022 on cybersecurity, there are 3 cybersecurity threats which cybersecurity leaders curious about and concerned. The first one is infrastructure breakdown due to the cyber attack. Another one is ransomware. And the new one, identity fraud. It's occurred rapidly from the pandemic period. Even if it starts with a rather simple way like printed photo, then coming to photo video from another device. And now we are as Oz Forensics, the company which develops biometric solution and prevent deepfake and spoofing attacks, we see that it's also new threat coming like spoofing video stream. For example, when the person uses virtual camera, download pre-recorded video and show it to bank application as a real one. That's the new area of threats we are coming on. And in that kind of environment, rapid development technologies, definitely what we need is to build the cyber resilience of the organization. And that's a big challenge. How can manage this kind of thing? Let's talk to our great participants. And talking about the banking development and digitalization, definitely the topic of third-party vendors occurred. And in that case, to participants, There is a first question. Does this kind of connection pose new kinds of risk to them? Who will be the first?
I would take the questions, if you don't mind.
Hi.
Hello, everyone, and sorry for not being there with you physically, and we are attending remotely. Indeed, there are many challenges today for the banks. Many banks, they are looking forward to develop new services to serve bigger customer base. And new services, new developments, they come along their own risks, indeed. And that's why security should be very well rigid. And it's about the combination to identify the user and the device and the applications that they are using all together as a combination. Taking one aspect of the cycle is not yet enough and is no longer enough. I would like to add on top of that, today the market is demanding more services. We are dealing with Generation Z and Generation X, and they are digitally born individuals. So they are demanding more digital services, and the hackers and the attackers are not awaiting asleep. Eventually, they are acting in real time and defying the bank's infrastructures and security layers. So indeed, there are challenges when we are introducing new services, and that's why security vendors like OneSpan is there to support the banks in identifying those threats and in order to plan for contingencies.
Well, thank you. Mohammed?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm sorry not be there also. I love the country there. I want to add to my colleague that the responsibility on the information security increase with the digital age, especially with the competition between banks depends on digital services. Now, the information security leaders must be things as business leaders, how to enable business, how to align with the business as a partner, how to be ahead to secure new introduced services, and aware of the new threats and attacks. So, and on the other hand, how to give the right awareness in the right language to the business to be to buy out their support and to work together hand in hand to secure new services, because now threats and attacks increasing, and with the new technology, new IoT, new AI. As you mentioned in the introduction, deepfake attacks and other things, we need a lot of work to do it.
Well, thank you. And the next question from your last conclusion, biometric identification could help to reduce some sort of risk. How do you see the implementation of this kind of systems?
The implementation must be taken carefully, because as it's increased the level of security, it's introduced and pose new threats or new risks, like identity theft, like vulnerability of the system itself, like the third party who support this system, and attacks on databases and the system of this biometric system.
I would like to add, if you allow me as well, Svetlana, on this perspective. Apple introduced fingerprint or finger ID back in iOS version number 8. And the way that they have done it on the iPhone is they replaced the static password with a more convenient way of authentication by scanning the fingerprint on the device. But eventually what they have done is they have created a keychain on the iPhone mobile phones where they are still storing the static password. And every time a user is scanning the fingerprint goes, opens that keychain, it takes back the static password and authenticates the user. From a convenience perspective, this is wonderful. The users are really happy. I can scan my fingerprint, I can access an application, or I can open the device. Is that secure enough? That's the big question. No. What we do at OneSpan in that case and that perspective from our experience is, eventually we kept the same convenience for the customers, where you still scan your fingerprint to open a mobile banking application, or maybe to sign a transaction, whether it is a payment, a transfer within the mobile app. But how we implement it in the background is completely different than what I spoke about earlier. What we do is we put some secure elements within a secure storage on the mobile device, which we take, which we encrypt, and we generate a secure key and a one-time password that's secured, encrypted, and that goes to be authenticated on a backend server to identify if this is the real user with the right device accessing the app, and then whether the access is granted or not. And this is the confusion that we've seen a lot when we were implementing our security solutions at banks in the region, where the banks were confused that I have already the finger ID on the mobile device and I can enable it and use it. Yes, it's the same user journey, but the security concept is completely different. Over there, you are still using a static password that can be stolen, that can be hacked easily, while over here you are still using a secured, encrypted one-time password that's authenticated with a backend server, taking many elements into consideration, which is the binding between the user, the application, and the device. This is a very important aspect that I advise all the banks to look into when they are trying to implement biometrics like fingerprint or Face ID.
Well, thank you. The question was just related to your experience. How do you think you use several stage authentication and verification of your clients? How does it maybe influence on a customer journey, on a conversion, client conversion?
That's a very important question. Today, what I would say is, unfortunately, still many banks in the region that are looking into authentication as a regulatory compliance aspect. It's a must to have in order to comply with central bank regulations. From our perspective, it's beyond that. Again, I go back to the new generation. They want everything to be really easy, really convenient. The Generation X, Generation Z, they are opening their phones by scanning their face, by scanning their fingerprint. They don't want to be interrupted. They want a frictionless experience. Some of the banks in the region, they have identified that issue, and they are working from an innovation perspective in order to bring more customers to them. Recent statistics and analysis and researches, they identified that many people, more than 70% in that survey of the surveyed people, they are ready to move and churn from their own bank to another one if the other bank is giving them better convenience and better services, which means if we have high churn, the bank is losing business. Eventually, you are counting on the customers to open accounts and to transact. So I need to balance between convenience, giving better way, frictionless experience for the users, and balancing it along as well with the right security. Because as my colleague Mohammed said, the CTOs today are business enablers. A long time back, maybe a decade back, CTOs might be looked into as the showstoppers for business. Like, I don't want you to put that service in place because it's risky for the bank. Today, it's no more the case. CTOs are business enablers, and they are bringing eventually more business use cases for the business to implement, but in a secured element. So yes, those implementations will bring more customers. Me as a user, as a bank customer, like you, like everyone else, we are looking for convenience. I need to open a bank account from my mobile device at the ease of my home, at the convenience of any time, from anywhere. I need to transact at any point of time and not to be facing a frictionless transaction. If you as a bank, you want to take the security layers, take them, but don't interrupt my transaction. And this is the load that the bank has today during the implementations.
I want to add something to my colleague, that another aspect of the risk assessment today is to have the business aspects. when you do the risk assessment, not only from technical perspective or vulnerability threats, what you need to add another dimension, what the business lose, how to solve this problem, and how to think together with the business to reach convenient and secure way, because it's not only one partner, it's two partner, business and information security. And you need to describe the risks in the business terms and understand what the business risk if they stop the business or reduce convenience or lose customer. So you need to add another dimension of risk assessment. It is the business side, not only control and risk from technical perspective.
Well, thank you. Definitely, when we use artificial intelligence, clouds, Internet of Things, and even blockchain and any other new technologies, we also should keen about the security. How do you think, how can the CEO or CISO tackle the threats arising from these new technologies?
What I can share is that artificial intelligence is playing a big role today in securing the banking layers. And I'll give some examples. When it comes to fraud monitoring, artificial intelligence and machine learning are playing a very vital role. Today, you cannot count only on checking the geolocation of the person. Where is he doing the transaction from? This is one aspect of many. Today, you need to look into the entire journey of the customer during the session and the transaction, and the way they are banking with the banks. I need to look into the history of that customer, analyze the history and the behavior pattern, where he used to spend the money, how he is spending the money, to whom, what time, from which devices, from which location, so on and so forth. All these real-time analysis will be playing a vital role in securing the transaction between the customer and the bank. So I would say, though the implementation of such type of elements, they have their own risks, but at the same time, there are pillars in securing the transactions of the bank and securing the journey of the customer.
Thank you.
We need also, as mentioned, profiling each customer and combine this with the authentication system. So if we find change in the customer behavior, you need to escalate the authentication system to add more questions to verify the customer, not the standard authentication. For example, normally a customer log in from Qatar. Suddenly he logged in from USA. So we need to add more layer of authentication, like security questions and other layer, until we verify this is the real customer we're dealing with.
Thank you. Just coming to cybersecurity readiness, how do you think are regional bank prepared?
From my experience with the banks, again, most of the banks, unfortunately, in the region, they are still looking into security as a regulatory aspect. It's, I must do that because I need to comply with the regulations. And that's why you are still seeing many of the banks in the region, especially in the GCC, they are still using SMS to authenticate their customers. All the national cybersecurity agencies around the world, they tell you SMS, OTP, or SMS authentication is not a secure element at all, because the SMS is not encrypted. That's number one. It's not under your control as a bank. It's under the control of the telco. That's number two. Three, you don't have a control if the message will reach the customer or not. So we are talking about balancing, again, the convenience with the cost and with the security elements. Today, the banks are not looking again into securing the journey of the customer like this is a need. I have to do it because I need to maintain the financial assets of my customers. As well, I need to secure my layers and my infrastructure. They are looking into it more from, I need to comply with this regulation. And that's why we are seeing as well the fraud is elevated in our region. Look into the SIM swapping. SIM swapping use cases are increasing tremendously in the Gulf region. Many people, fortunes and savings have been stolen by attackers and hackers using SIM swapping techniques or account takeovers, so on and so forth. So we really need to elevate that importance for the banks to implement proper security layers on different areas, whether on the device, the applications, or the users themselves from identity perspective, in order to protect themselves. So today, security is not a luxury and that I decide at any point of time if I want it or not. Still, banks are doing the mistake. They consider the security as a cost on them. And they don't put in the proper budgets for it. Unfortunately, this is the reality and the truth. So we have to look into security from different perspectives. Again, as we said, myself and Mr. Mohammed, it should be a business enabler. So the more I'm robust, the more I'm offering secure transactions, the more the customers will like to do transactions with me or to open accounts with me. And they will come to me because they feel safe. Never underestimate the reputational risk that the banks are taking. We do know that every bank that's under attacks or fraud transactions and maneuvers, they're losing a lot of their credibility and their reputation in the market, and this is really costly. It's costing them the churn of the customers.
Another issue that, as I mentioned, that the responsibility on information security or CISO to be a business leader, the problem with the culture in GCC or the region, they look for security as IT thing or technical thing, not as a business issue. They need to change the culture to have security is a part of the business strategy and part of the business initiative. And as we saw now, the culture changed in other parts in the world. When attacks succeed, the CEO is the first one to be terminated, not the CISO, if the CISO did his due diligence. So the culture must change. As we said, the CISO need to be business leaders. Business must consider information security and cybersecurity as a business issue, not IT thing or IT security. Also, they not need to be proactive toward the customer. They need to focus on customer awareness. And I saw it started in GCC, campaigns with customized character to enforce awareness. And it started after a lot of fraud cases. So it was reactive thing after what happened. We need to think with a specialized media along with the cybersecurity expert to launch continuous awareness campaign for the customer, not to wait until new fraud scenario happen and be reactive. We must be, as we do awareness to our employee, we must focus on the customer because they are partners in business, banks partner for business. Without customer, banks has no business.
Well, thank you. Just coming to an idea now that definitely new technologies are growing and some of them are opening new markets. That means that they are not regulated. How do you think, how can financial institutions work together with the regulator more closely in order to accept new innovation technologies and implement it to the infrastructure of the financial institutions? What are the major steps of it? What do you think?
In the past 6 years, we've been striving a lot to work along with regulators in the region to enable the business for the banks. Banks, they want innovation. They are innovative. They want to offer more services, and they want to reach out to the unbanked population or the underbanked population. But unfortunately, still the regulators and the central banks, they are looking into those new services and new technologies as threat. And they are putting very rigid regulations, and in many cases, the banks were put off. So the services are not implemented. I can give you a simple example. Fingerprint authentication for login or for transaction signature. I bet you can go to many countries in the Middle East and you will see that they are not allowed as per the regulation, because the regulators, they think that this is not a secure element. That's why we strive always as technology vendors, as security vendors, to educate even the regulators that even those new services can be secured. You have different layers that you should look into. It's not only from one layer, it's a complete journey. Authentication alone is not the only solution. You have to go into mobile application security, application shielding. You have to go into fraud monitoring layers, so on and so forth, because the attackers and the hackers are now very well advanced, and it's an organized crime. It's no longer that it's one person behind his computer trying to attack one big chunk of transaction. Now it is many people trying to attack even smaller transactions because they need bigger volume, and it's very well organized. So it is still a struggle. I don't see the level of maturity yet, but yeah, we have to continue educating. We have to continue elevating the awareness in the market about these new technologies, the risks associated with them, but at the same time, the contingency plans that you can put in place.
There's another two issue we are facing as banks for security. Now, most for security technology or other solution going for cloud. And the new features and new advanced feature of security solutions became on the cloud, which issue we facing with central banks. They are not allowing cloud. So we see a big issue, and it's increasing because a lot from solution on-premises going from cloud or reduce features on-premises. This will be booming problem in the future for us to secure banks. They must take care of that. Now it's not an option, I think, for that. Other thing, regulators looking for banks for regulation and mandate things. But now, as we saw last year, and a lot of attacks happened from third party. The third party doesn't have the same maturity security for themselves, and the attacks started from third party. So it's not only central bank; it's nationwide must be regulate vendors, regulate third parties, because it's easy for the attacker to start with a small company supporting banks and launch from their attack to the bank. Because another way banks dealing with third party with semi-trusted, not untrusted. And this is also law for regulation for third-party risk assessment must be added also on the bank regulation. And it's not only cybersecurity part for regulation for all aspects of third party.
Well, thank you. It seems that we still have time for the last question and maybe Q&A from the audience. The last question is, from a pandemic period and most part of the organization are going to hybrid type of working, just first of all remote and then remote and in office. Definitely, it's also occur in financial institutions. And how do you face these kind of changes? What did you do, and how it changed your structure, your maybe policies in banks?
I can take that answer from a vendor perspective to tell you how we help the banks, because indeed we've seen a big demand starting 2020, starting the pandemic eventually, for security solutions to secure the access of remote employees. Many banks today, they have minimized their physical branches. They went into a more digital approach, and they are eventually adopting into a hybrid mode between remote and physical presence. Two major type of solutions or implementations have taken place in the market, I would say. Securing the access of the employees into the applications remotely, whether into the VPN or web applications, and that element comes through the authentication. So they are putting multi-factor and strong authentication mechanisms in place to secure the access. On top of that as well, many banks, they have adopted application shielding solutions in order to protect the applications in real time against any attacks, against any malware, and against any fraudulent activities that are happening on the mobile device. Today, many organizations around the world are no longer adopting the hardware authentication mechanisms. They are as well adopting bring your own device. Eventually, they are authenticating their employees based on mobile applications, based on software. But that is associated with some risks. And here where we have the banks, we've seen a big adoption in the market, a big surge in that demand. And we're going to see it not only during the pandemic period, but we're going to see it as a trend and a pattern for the future.
Thank you.
Another part is awareness. Normally, staff used to have culture of working in office. Now, while they are away, you cannot control their behaviors on as you do on the network. So you must focus a lot of on awareness, how to work out of office, how to secure their devices, how to authenticate, right? And on the other hand, to implement a model like zero trust model of security and to more restriction on the access and layers like OTP and other things, and try to limit the access to the application on the need basis as much as we can.
Thank you. Do we have time to Q&A session? Okay. Yes, thank you so much for all the participants and our great panelists for sharing the experience. Just to come into a conclusion, there's still a lot of challenges in front of CEOs, CISO chiefs, and nevertheless, new technology helps us, first of all, to make our life easier, and on the other hand, we should stay strong and make it secure. Thank you so much. I will be glad to share the report of World Economic Forum about cybersecurity trends. You can take my business card on the booth of forensics. Spoof our technology with MS and understand how it works. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.